Hello everyone, how's it going? In this video, we will cover the stock Cosmos Health, trading under the ticker symbol COSM. The market has been very volatile recently, with many titles having huge swings up and down. Many people are interested in Cosmos Health because of the short squeeze potential. So in today's video, we will take a look at the stock from a technical and fundamental perspectives and determine what would be a recommended action to carry out for the stock. If you appreciate my content, please consider to drop a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Also, please check out the links down in the description section, as every help is greatly appreciated. Over the past few days, Cosmos has been doing very well, frequently testing the $7 level, breaking away from the previous attempts. The price action of Cosmos has been going on a lot of ups and downs, with a very clear attempt or intention to go higher. There were many attempts before, and many of them or all of them didn't succeed. Before the breakthrough of this week, the current price action suggested that the bulls have regrouped and decided to rush eventually. Well, now they have done so. For the time being, I would say that we should expect to see Cosmos testing the $10 by the end of this week or the beginning of the next. And as long as the bullish momentum exists, the sky is the limit as far as the price action goes. Let's not forget that there is a significant size of short position betting against Cosmos. I believe that the current momentum could be a decent entry point, assuming that the stock still has a lot of room of growth ahead of us. So Cosmos Health is an international healthcare group based in Chicago, selling nutraceuticals in two product lines, Sky Premium and Mediterranean. It also commercializes generic medications. The company has presence in the United Kingdom and continental Europe. Overall, they have commercial presence in Europe, Middle East, Asia, of course, North America. The company has an emphasis on nutraceutical research due to the low risk profiles and also relatively clear regulations in this section. It's worth mentioning that the management believes that the stock now has a solvency issue, putting its going concern into doubt. The management mentioned that due to recurring losses, there will eventually be a going concern issue to be put on the table, and they believe that there can be a few solutions to be considered. Long story short, regarding of whether they should be issue new stocks, issue new debts, or have a restructuring of the debts, essentially they want to reduce the obligatory cash outflows and have a massive cash injections, something along those lines. Ultimately, they have decided to sell the equity, diluting shareholders, taking advantage of the renewed interest that retail investors have in Cosmos Health due to the expected short squeeze and the price increase that soon followed. The long-term price action has been plagued by poor results as well as the piling up of short orders, causing the price to plummet for a period of time. A long period of time. For the period between August and November 2022, the stock price declined by more than 80% before recovering back a little bit. Over the past few years, it regularly traded between the high tens and the low 3 digits. Obviously, if we only look at the whole situation from a technical perspective, we would believe that now is a good opportunity to buy, historically speaking. This might very well be the case, however, I personally believe that given the current circumstances, especially the market conditions, we are unlikely to see the stock getting back to these highs, at least in the medium term or shorter, as the market and the company have evolved from how they were previously. With that being said, we should be able to see some significant recoveries nonetheless, due to the short squeeze if it were to occur. Although the relevance of financials are limited in the case of Cosmos, the financials can tell us some key information about its financial health. When we look at the profitability, things are stagnating. Both revenue and gross margins have a hard time growing, while the operating expenses have been hovering between $2 to $3 million. What that means is that if Cosmos Health is popular with shareholders, people are looking for potentials beyond the fundamentals, if we assume that things will remain constant. The positive aspect in all this, if we have to find one, is that its liabilities are under control, between $40 and $45 million, with a peak around the Q4 of 2021 at $51 million. So the company is trying its best to keep things under control. But we can also see that the company's assets and operations are almost entirely financed by debts, with a relatively small portion of equity. This means that Cosmos would have a significant amount of obligatory cash outflows, and if they don't comply to those repayments, the company will go insolvent, with its assets liquidated to reimburse the creditors first, and then give the leftovers to equity shareholders, if there is anything that is left afterwards. The cash situation for Cosmos is also negative, with most of the cash inflows from financing, some of which is from debt. Well, I mean, most of it is from debt. This also confirms that the remarks earlier regarding debt versus equity financing and also the obligatory cash outflows. Overall, the situation of Cosmos is not looking good. And this is the reason why it has a large short position against it. This would reinforce my feeling that Cosmos Health is good for trading and not necessarily for investment. The low cash levels suggest that the company may have to go through another round of dilution soon, or to issue more debts. So now let's also take a look at the shareholder composition. There is currently no institutional shareholders. If this is the case, we would be looking at a stock that is obviously fit for short-term swing trade. The uncertain future of Cosmos would mean that the short-term outlook of the stock would be very volatile, upward or otherwise. One key behavioral difference between institutional and retail traders is their investment horizon. Institutionals tend to take longer views. This is why they can afford to ignore the short-term volatilities. Retails, on the other hand, tend to focus more on the short-term gains and more likely to make decisions on a whim. Another behavioral difference is that very often institutional shareholders tend to be more active in the corporate governance. We might also be very active in corporate governance, to be honest, but we tend to type it out on a Reddit post or in YouTube comments instead of sharing it with the management, because we may not be able to reach them in the first place, or very difficult to do so. Now, Cosmos Health has a massive appeal due to the potentials for a short squeeze. The short squeezes are what shareholders hope to achieve by piling in a stock that is massively shorted, forcing the short sellers to redeem their positions. They are very often compelled to do so because as long as those positions remain open, they would have to pay financing fees to brokers, and also having to assume the risk of infinite loss, since the potential loss is from their entry point and the infinitely high. In the case of Cosmos, there is a large position of shares being sold against the company, taking more than 1.3 days to cover. This means that if the shares were to skyrocket, whether because of the fundamentals have improved, the changing prospects, or the demand for the stock, this may force the shorts to redeem. Overall, I believe that those shares have a significant possibility to squeeze, at least for the moment. It's important to note that the short interest is not a guarantee of a short squeeze, but a metric worth monitoring for the investors. It's also worth considering that the short sellers may have valid reasons for their bearish sentiment, and that short squeeze may never happen to begin with. So, based on the analysis, I would recommend to wait to start buying Cosmos shares and to hold it for around 30 to 50% of your profit target, and to liquidate part or all of your position once the target has been reached. I believe that COSM deserves to be in your portfolio if your risk tolerance is high and if the holdings are diversified. I would recommend an exposure of around 1% of your portfolio.